Welcome back to the pregame report, everyone. I'm Lainey Gerber, and across from me is Parker Terrell, as usual. And the Cowboys are in Fort Worth today, getting ready to take on TCU in what is the second to last game of the regular season. They're coming off of a pretty impressive win over Tech. It was close, 150-44, but all of our score predictions were off because we definitely thought with all the injury adversity the Cowboys were facing that it was going to be a much lower scoring game, but it wasn't.
Well, it was a classic Big 12 shootout. We haven't been in a game like that in a long time. Mike Gundy talked about that throughout the week. Just a game where, obviously he's not going to say this, but where the defense played badly. We haven't given up 44 points, and I don't even remember
Definitely not all season.
Well, other than the OU game we gave up in the 40s,
Yeah.
But other than that, our defense has been so solid all year. It was odd, honestly, to see them give up that many points to a Texas Tech team that was struggling. We talked about it last week. They were not coming in. They have a few wins, but they are definitely not a good team overall. But Alan Bowman, the Texas Tech quarterback, we didn't know who was going to start, who was really going to play. He ended up playing the entire game. He loves to play OSU. So this was his coming out party when he first came on the scene as a freshman. And now in his last game as a senior, presumably, if he doesn't decide to come back, he finished with 384 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, albeit a costly interception that was a pick six to Trey Sterling. So who knows what happens without that pick six and without the onside kick touchdown recovery in this game. I do think that the way that we were playing, we were up by quite a bit when they did score that last touchdown to make it 44 or we were up by double digits.
Yeah.
And then they scored that last touchdown. And again, we could have scored another touchdown at the end to make it 57-44, which changes the outlook on the game. But it was a dogfight for sure. At home, senior day, and I'm glad that we got a win. But it's definitely I'm a little apprehensive about today's game because if the defense plays like that, then Max Duggan and TCU could run all over us.
Yeah, the defense definitely wasn't as shut down of the opposing offense, but at the same time, they kind of helped us win the game by Trey Sterling's pick six and then Jason Taylor II's onside kick recovery for a touchdown as well.
Yeah, so
without that, then we could. Desmond Jackson also, if we didn't get those, he probably would have scored that one touchdown instead of sliding down to run out the clock. But
true. I don't think there's a lot of parallels to be drawn from this game. It was just an outlier. Other than, and we'll talk about it in the offensive segment, our offense did play well. That's what happens when you're running back and your running game is solid. You are able to win games like this. You're able to grind it out and get a big win. And Desmond Jackson, he's the big story of the game. He 36 carries, 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, could have easily had a fourth, decided to slide down at the end. And he's going to be the featured guy today against TCU. Chuba Hubbard has not practiced all week. He's not going to play. And LD Brown is, again, hurt and not going to play, but he's available if needed. So it's going to be the Desmond Jackson show today. He's going to go up against a much more disciplined and much more talented defense in TCU than Texas Tech, who I would say is the second worst in the conference, aside from Kansas. So we'll see. Again, Tylan Wallace played well, 7 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown for OSU in that game. He had that great catch in the end zone. Tylan Wallace is back to full speed, Lainey. He's looking as good as he ever was before the injury last season and in past seasons. He's playing himself into possibly a third-round draft pick, something like that. If he does really well at the Combine or his pro day, he can bump that up. But that's a good sign to see. Spencer Sanders did have that one interception, but other than that, he played a solid game, something that we've been asking from him since – I can't even remember the last time that we asked for a solid game from him. He did, again, play well against Texas, had lots of turnovers. So there's some positives going forward from this game, but I'm not going to count this game as anything, any glaring issues. Because, again, you got a team that's on their heels in Texas Tech. You've got a good coach in Matt Wells, and they're trying to, ruin our season, ruin senior day for us. They came in with nothing to lose, and you saw the final score reflected that.
Yeah, I'm excited, or I'm optimistic that it was that we saw our offense take control kind of the game last week because we've been relying so heavily on our defense all season. So it's nice to see them put up big numbers. We in the Big 12 we're used to seeing that, and so we kind of liked, seeing the lower numbers and seeing such a dominant defense with our team. But I liked seeing the offense take charge of the game just because, like you said, we've been wanting a solid game from Spencer Sanders, and Chuba hasn't really been himself, and so we've just been wanting solid offensive performances, and that was one.
Well, I think that the one thing that you can take out of this game is the offensive line played really well. I think they were the Pro Football Focus, either the highest graded offensive line or one of them. For the first time all season, you really saw them dominate. But again, take that with a grain of salt in that I think Texas Tech's defensive line might even be worse than Kansas. They're really, really bad. So but that's good that they were able to push them around and control them because, when you're better, that's what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Maybe that reflects again today. Maybe that they can, get the offensive line and get Desmond Jackson going again. But again, this is a totally different animal of a defense, coached by Gary Patterson, the TCU Horned Frogs, one of the best defensive coaches in the country. I get that he's struggled this year at some points, and he has struggled in the last few years, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to be ready. He's going to have a game plan, and he's going to notice that our offensive line was dominant last Saturday, and he's going to try to neutralize them the best that he can. So we'll see. I think that, again, like you were talking about, the offensive efficiency was definitely something to watch and something that I don't know if we'll see that today, and we're definitely not going to see 235 yards and 3 touchdowns from Desmond Jackson. But if he can have, a good day, I think that we can come out of Fort Worth with a win.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing about our offense that teams don't have to worry about from here on out is Tevin Jenkins, because he's foregoing the rest of the season for...
Not a big surprise, yeah. He struggled with injuries. We saw him in the Bedlam game crying on the sidelines because he just was dealing with so much pain, and the coaches had probably told him, hey, you're done for the game, and he was, the emotions flood over you when that happens. But no, Tevin Jenkins is going to be at least a second-round draft pick in the NFL. Mm-hmm. He is being graded as one of the best by multiple draft pundits and draft analysts. So, he may even be able to slip into the first round. So I don't blame him one bit for doing what he did. Get healthy, get ready for the Combine, get ready for the Senior Bowl, and try to, increase his draft stock the best that he can and start training for that. So I don't blame him at all. I guess we thank him for what he did this season, gutting through a lot of injuries, and having a great career as a Cowboy. So
yeah, I don't blame him either. Of course, selfishly, we want him to play out the rest of the season for us. And some people get really mad about those things because they think you need to ride or die for your college team.
Listen, if it's not a national championship or the playoff, I have no problem with skipping or ending the season early, or in this year opting out early. We've seen that a lot too. No, you've got to take care of you. You've got to take care of your family, and there are millions of dollars on the line potentially. So I do not blame him one bit.
Mm-hmm. And we also have a potential Big 12 championship on the line, and Adam Engel is going to join us from Wyoming, just like last week, to update us on OSU's chances at that.
Thank you so much, Parker and Lainey. Happy game day, guys, from here in Wyoming. Super excited to join you guys virtually. Once again, another week of OSU football means another week of fun. So remember last week when we talked, there was still so much going on, so many unsettled scores in terms of the Big 12 title scenarios. Well, unfortunately, this week it's still more complicated. In fact, it will stay complicated until really all games by next week, all Big 12 games have been played. So just bear with me, keep that in mind. None of these situations whatsoever are final. They are all hypothetical. So even though Oklahoma State won last week in thrilling fashion over Texas Tech, the scenarios for a spot in the Big 12 title game still remain very much complicated. Now, to recap last week, Iowa State went down to Austin on Black Friday and defeated Texas after kicker Cameron Dicker missed a game-tying field goal in what was a very exciting game to watch. Here's a look at your Big 12 standings. You see Iowa State occupying the top spot with a 7-1 record, and then, of course, OU and OSU both with 5-2 records. Please do keep in mind, folks, Oklahoma University, does indeed have the tiebreaker over OSU after that Bedlam fiasco 2 weeks ago. Now, of course, Cowboy fans should first and foremost be focused on the Pokes. The most uncomplicated path to the Big 12 title for Oklahoma State would first be to win out. Now, that is the biggest deal in itself. Outside of TCU and OSU, just moments away, Poke fans should be cheering hard for West Virginia to beat Iowa State this afternoon. Now, that's extremely important. Here's why. A Cyclone loss in their last regular season game, guys, would put the Cyclones at 7-2, which means if Oklahoma State and OU were to win out, there would be a 3-way tie, and the tiebreaker would be decided by each team's performance in descending order of the conference. So, even I can't really fully explain that to you because, like I said, we're still going to have to wait until all the scores, all games have been played next week to get a final definite answer. So this is not an easy path by any means. Now, in simple terms, the easiest path for the Cowboys to be traveling to Arlington would be to win out and then have OU lose to either Baylor or West Virginia. So in that case, the Pokes would face off against the Cyclones. Now, if OU and OSU both win out now, and then if Iowa State beats West Virginia, then unfortunately for the Cowboy fans, the final would be Sooners and Cyclones. Now, of course, it is a very much so tough and complicated scenario, but my advice for Cowboy fans and the Cowboys themselves is just to focus on TCU and worry about OSU. Well, that is it for me, guys, this week. Thank you so much once again for having me on virtually from Wyoming back to the studio in Oklahoma. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much for that, Adam. Yeah, this TCU team that we're going to see today is not as bad as I think people have been giving them credit for. They're pretty solid.
They're a solid team. They lost by 2 to Iowa State early in the year when Duggan was dealing with, I think, COVID issues or he was injured or something. Mm-hmm. They could have easily won that game. And then they, of course, let me pull that back up. So they lost to OU pretty handily. So, I mean, that's something that was not unexpected. I mean, OU, of course, that was when they really started to get going on this crazy streak that they're on now. And then they did lose to West Virginia 24-6, which that's really their only bad loss to me. I think that they just didn't, Max Duggan didn't get going in that game. He wasn't able to, utilize his legs to the best that he can, which is really their offense. He's their leading rusher, or at least one of them. And then they did lose to Kansas State by a touchdown, and that was, again, back when Kansas State, I believe, still had their starting quarterback, and they were, beating OU. So this is one of the best 4-loss teams in the country, I would say. TCU, for sure. They are sound on defense, and they have Gary Patterson, you always have a chance when he's your coach. On the defensive side of the ball, and then Max Duggan, of course, an athletic quarterback that is talented.
Absolutely. And looking at special teams, we're going to send it to Alex and Ian across the studio, and they're going to tell us who has the edge today.
Thank you, Laney and Parker. And important note, the last time Oklahoma State scored 50 points was against McNeese State last September. So it's been a while since we've had the 50 burgers. So.
Right. Looking at special teams, I think that we decided that OSU does have the edge overall. Now I know that TCU has a pretty solid kicker that you have some stats to talk about in a minute. Alex Hale, our Cowboys kicker throughout all the season, is still suffering from that hip injury. I believe that's what the team doctors have announced, that is a hip injury, so he'll be out the rest of the season. Brady Pohl had a kind of rough game last week. He was 0 for 1 with field goals, and he was 6 for 7 with extra points, so nothing close to a perfect game. But on the other side of the ball with the punting, Tom Hutton had a great game. He averaged 43.2 yards per punt, which is pretty impressive yardage for that. Then we have that kick return for a touchdown by Jason Taylor. It was a return for 48 yards, and that was the first special teams touchdown in 5 years.
Wow.
Right, so it was pretty impressive for the Cowboys. Jason Taylor, props to him for getting that. It was when Tech, I think here it is, yes. Tech tried to do an onside kick, and obviously did not work for their in their favor as Taylor took it back to the end zone for that touchdown there for the Cowboys. So pretty impressive game overall on special teams. What do you think about TCU?
I think TCU is competitive. I feel like they're competitive in all aspects.
Right. We have a lot of things to talk about for who has the edge today.
Absolutely. Griffin Kell, TCU's kicker, 11 and 15 on field goals, 26 out of 27 extra point wise. His career long is 49. From the 40 to 49 yard range, he is 2 for 5. From the 30 to 39 yard range, he is 7 of 8. So he's a decent kicker as far as college kickers go, because college kickers sometimes have their off days. He looks pretty good. He looks decent. I'd probably give him the kicking advantage.
Right, that's what we were talking to, especially just with Brady Pohl. This will be his, third game, I believe?
Yes.
So just having less experience there on OSU side.
Yes, absolutely. But their punting's a little off. Jordy Sandy, the sophomore from Canada, 48 punts, 40.6 yards per punt, but he has 0 punts inside the 20. So that's a little bit of a, I don't know what to make of that stat. It doesn't look good if you're Sandy.
Right. I think that, like we said, OSU definitely does have the edge for that. And I'm hoping that Brady Pohl can get back out there now that he's in his groove. Last week it was just probably a rough game. As you said, being a college kicker, you have good days and your bad days. But hopefully the Cowboys can have the edge on that with special teams. And, maybe we will see another special teams touchdown. That was cool. Haven't seen it in a while. But definitely looking the Cowboys to have the edge for special teams.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that at all. Jason Taylor, second touchdown.
Right.
Second, really long touchdown. He had that interception, fumble thing against Kansas State. And then he had that onside kickoff return. So we're going to talk about the defense next, but we're going to take a commercial break first. Or no, we're going to send it back to Lainey and Parker.
There we go. Thank you. It's okay. It happens. But going back to talking about this TCU team today, Parker, Max Duggan, we were talking about before the show, is as complete of a dual threat QB as you can get.
Yeah, he's their leading rusher by a good margin with 7 touchdowns, 409 yards on the season. So that's 2 more than Chuba Hubbard has in the touchdown department. I've watched him play. He is really fast. The game that I was watching, the announcers claimed that he ran a 4.3. I don't believe that, but he is he's a lot faster than Sam Ehlinger is. But he's similar in that he is going to run when the play breaks down, but also TCU has a lot of designed runs for him. But watch out for Zach Evans, too. He's a former 5-star running back, the number 1 rated tailback in the nation coming out of high school, had a lot of off-the-field issues, was committed to Georgia, enrolled at Georgia, got basically dismissed, or he was let out of his national letter of intent, ends up at TCU in Texas, his home state, and he's just now getting going for that TCU offense. He's a weapon to watch out for sure because he has all the talent in the world. It's just a matter of, can he get it going behind TCU? His offensive line, which is very mediocre.
Well, we're going to talk more about the TCU offense and the OSU defense. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to the pregame report. The OSU defense gave up 639 yards against Texas Tech, which is not that great, but they did force 3 turnovers, and we've been talking about turnovers and how the defense needs to force those because, as we can see, those can kind of dictate a game.
So, I mean, I agree. Talking about OSU's defense taking on TCU's offense. So, I get Oklahoma State's offense has struggled a good part of the year because OSU is averaging 28.9 points a game and TCU is averaging 28.4. So super similar numbers on the offensive side of the ball. The difference is TCU doesn't have a Tylan Wallace. They don't really have any difference makers at the receiver position. They really rely on Max Duggan to make plays with his legs and, of course, their running game with Zach Evans, as I was talking about earlier. They do have a guy that's got like 320 yards and 2 touchdowns on the year, but it's mostly just a receiver by committee that they have in TCU. I'm excited for the defense to, try to get a bounce back. We thought that they would bounce back from the OU game with Texas Tech, and it was quite the opposite. Giving up, like you said, 44 points, over 600 yards of total offense to a quarterback that has struggled all year in Alan Bowman, a guy that, coming in, we didn't even know if he was going to start because of his poor play in some parts. But we do get Colby Harvell-Peel back. He didn't play the second, third, and fourth quarters of the last game. And Rodarius Williams may have been banged up in the last game because he was listed in the injury report today as he is going to play. So that's a welcome sign. But no, I think that finally OSU's defense is going to get back on track and they're going to hold TCU to less than 30 points. They're probably going to hold them to less than I would bet that they would hold them to less than their number. I have them at 27 points today, which is less than what they average. I think that OSU secondary at full strength is able to shut down TCU's receivers because there are not a lot of guys that make a big difference. It's about the guys in the middle. Can Amon, can Malcolm, and those guys control Max Duggan in the run game of TCU? Can we control him when he gets outside of the pocket? Because when he gets outside of the pocket, most people are going to make plays with their arms, like Purdy, like Ellinger, like Rattler. Duggan's looking to make plays with his legs.
Absolutely. And
he's fast enough that he can break off a big run, not just for first downs, but for touchdowns. So that'll be something to watch. I trust Amon. I trust Malcolm. They're one of the smartest players both of them are some of the smartest players that I've seen. They're able to contain quarterbacks. They haven't had a lot of trouble all year with a dual threat guy. I mean, Rattler caused them issues, but there was a lot of other issues in that game, not just Rattler. So that's what I'll be looking for today.
Yeah.
Again, Jarek Bernard Converse. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I was just going to say, I think our front 7 guys are really going to be important today because of that run game. And in TCU's 59-point win over Kansas, they threw the ball just 15 times. So we know that their running attack is their go-to. So they're really just going to have to stack that line and just really the defensive ends are just really going to have to do their job and be defensive ends and just not let running backs or Max Duggan around them.
Yeah, and they're solid. I said they had an average offensive line. That was kind of a slight. I think they're above average slightly. Obviously, if they're able to get that many rushing yards per game. So they have they're pretty balanced in terms of their stats, 192 yards passing per game to 197 yards rushing. But that doesn't really tell the whole story because they rely on their rushing, especially in the red zone. When we say that Max Duggan is a dual-threat quarterback, it's in every sense of the word. Harken back to Jalen Hurts, harken back to Kyler Murray, guys like that are looking to score. They're not just trying to, run when the play breaks down. And we see it sometimes with Spencer Sanders when he's healthy. In the red zone, there are plays designed for him to score. And right now, he's their best offensive weapon. Max Duggan is for TCU, and they're going to try to get him involved the most. Last year, we saw Max Duggan as a freshman coming out party. He had a very bad game against OSU. He had multiple interceptions in that game. He looked flustered the entire time. I think that this could be somewhat of a revenge, game for him. He's going to show that he has progressed and try to get a win, a big win in this game to get them over 500 for TCU and to eliminate any possible chance for OSU to get into the Big 12 championship.
And another key part that I hope our defense is kind of honing in on this game is the fact that since Max Duggan doesn't really throw the ball, that much and, doesn't have like the greatest receivers, that our linebackers really key in on him, because last week we saw Calvin Bundage had a safety with Alan Bowman. So I think that if we can do that again, or just like, pressure Max Duggan, because he'll be looking around, nothing will happen. They can tackle him. I think our defense could really get a few sacks today.
I think you're right. I think Trace Ford is going to have a great game today. He's a lot more talented than anybody that TCU has on the offensive line. But one thing about OSU's defense is they can get a little trigger happy on the blitz. We saw that against Texas Tech. We would bring an all-out blitz, and Alan Bowman was able to, take advantage of that deep. I was going to say Jarek Bernard-Converse had probably his worst game that I've seen.
Yes.
In a Cowboy uniform. He was getting beat left and right by Texas Tech receivers. And really, again, he had a poor showing in that game. Eric Ezukanma had 183 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if Rodarius Williams being injured, I'm sure Bernard-Converse was on him a lot. So that's something to watch for today. But again, TCU does not have the receivers that Texas Tech have. But that doesn't mean Max Duggan can't beat you over the top when you do an all-out blitz. I think that they're going to spy Max Duggan with someone like Tanner McAllister, someone like Trey Sterling, to make sure that he doesn't get outside and doesn't break off those big runs. But one thing with OSU, they tend to start slow. They started slow against Texas Tech, started slow against OU, of course. And that's something I would like to see OSU's defense not give up those scoring plays early in the game. I would like to see them, in the red zone, be able to stop a team, hold them to a field goal. Because, it seems like clockwork. The first possession of the game against these good teams, Iowa State scored on the first possession. Texas scored on the first possession. So, really set the tone early and make sure that our offense is in a better position. Barring that we get the ball first, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. Our players to watch today are Trey Sterling and Jarek Bernard-Converse, just because Trey, we saw, had such an impressive game last week, didn't get a Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. Absolutely
Huge
snubbed.
snub.
Very interesting to see that. But so I'm excited to see what he does today, if he'll keep that momentum going, if it was just a good game, or if this is like how Trey Sterling is now.
No, I think that he is proving to be the best player on our defense, along with Trace Ford. He's a guy that looks like he could play in the NFL. He's already, I don't know if he's made this decision, but he did make a comment saying that he was going to come back as a receiver next year. So I get that he was joking around, but his draft stock is pretty high. I don't know if he can improve it a lot more. I'm sure that he can, but we'll see on that. But no, Trey Sterling, he's been dealing with injuries. Now I think that he's healthy again, and he showed out against Texas Tech. And I think that he's able to show out again today, especially in the tackling department. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to tackle Max Duggan and tackle those TCU running backs.
Absolutely. And then for the sake of Jarek Bernard-Converse, we just want to see, he had all his tackles last week for solo, but we're just hoping to see him have a more complete game like we've seen earlier in this
Corners
season.
have bad games every once in a while.
It's a tough position.
So, yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think that he will bounce back.
Well, comparing these two defenses, we're going to send it over to Alex and Ian again, and they're going to tell us who has the edge defensively.
Thank you, guys. Parker, I think you brought up how OSU's defense has not been playing the best their last couple of games. Earlier this week, Tanner McAllister, talking to the media availability, he did say that the defensive side of the ball for the Cowboys does have some things to make up. But despite that, I think that the Cowboys do have the edge on defense. But before we analyze that more, what have you seen from the TCU defense?
Well, first I got to say, I would like to declare myself the president of the Trey Sterling for Defensive Player of the Year for the Big 12 fan club thing. He deserves to be the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He's been dominant all year.
Last week especially, he had those he had 2 fumble recoveries and a 65-yard pick six. So just last week alone, he was a star of that for the Cowboys defense.
And it feels like he's like all over the place with just trying to get the ball, and like he's always on the man who has the ball. He's good at what he does. He gets like 7 tackles a game almost. I want to say I don't know the number on that, but on TCU's defense, they have a guy, O'Shawn Mathis, who has 7 sacks right now, and 6 of those were in the last 3 games. So they have 21 sacks all year. I think the most I've seen from a team thus far. But that defensive line might be something to watch out for, especially Mathis.
Right. For the Cowboy side of the ball, you know, we were talking earlier before the show that TCU's coach, Gary Patterson, is known for his defense. And Gundy said earlier this week, you know, that he loves playing against Patterson and that he always can learn something from Patterson, especially with the defensive side of the ball. But the Cowboys are ready. Gundy also said that Rodarius Williams in the cornerback position is the hottest player on the Cowboys team right now. So definitely be looking out to him. You know, he was really excited to play the Horned Frogs this week. I think that OSU, the Cowboys can this is their week. You know, we started out the season really strong, holding our opponents to a really low score. On the season, we hold our opponents to 24 points per game, while TCU holds their opponents to 26 points per game. So statistically, we do have the edge there. I think the Cowboy defense is ready to prove themselves and show that, hey, we started out the season really strong with defense, and we can finish it strong as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you think of TCU, you think of their defense,
right.
Like you said. Their defensive coordinator, Chad Glasgow, was actually a linebacker for Oklahoma State in the early 90s and was a graduate assistant in 94 and 95. So they have pieces there. They have a 4-2-5 defense, which, you know, puts a lot of emphasis on covering receivers and, you know, trying to limit how much they do in the air and try to keep it on the ground, which with Desmond Jackson and Dominic Richardson,
right.
bold prediction. I got Dominic Richardson getting a touchdown in this game. Because he was recruited by TCU. I like a little bit of revenge there.
Right.
I think that'd be nice to see.
It's always
from
fun
Dominic.
anytime we play these Texas teams, you know, Tech, Texas, and TCU, because all these players, you know, either didn't get recruited and ended up going to the Cowboys, but
Yes.
just a fun little.
Absolutely, for sure. Two guys I have to watch on here. Garrett Wallow, who has 37 solo tackles, 66 total, and a sack. And then Gahari Coleman, the freshman from New Orleans, 3 sacks on the year and 20 total tackles.
Well, hopefully the Cowboys can prove themselves on defense today and that they do have the edge. But when we come back, we'll do offense. But first, back to Lainey and Parker.
Thank you so much. And as Ian pointed out, what's really going to be important today also, we keep talking about important things, is our offensive line again, because, you know, we don't have Tevin Jenkins, but we haven't had him for a little while. But all the sacks that TCU has been able to put up this season, and Spencer is pretty familiar with sacks.
Well, I think that is a huge point of emphasis for this game. OSU's offensive line has struggled with pass protection throughout the season, but we'll see. They played really well last week, again, against not a super talented Texas Tech defensive line. TCU does have a talented defensive line. Another guy to mention for TCU's defense is a guy named Trayvon Moerig. I don't really know how to say his name, Moerig. He's a first-round draft pick, by consensus first-round draft pick, probably one of the most talented safeties in the country. Something to watch out for on the back end. I mean, Spencer Sanders has had trouble throwing interceptions. He's a guy that's a ball hawk. He's looking to get interceptions. And I'd like to see how that plays out. But no, your point about the offensive line is true, and we'll really see if they have improved as a unit. Because, you know, I saw something today before we go to break. The Pro Football Focus has rated Oklahoma State's offensive line in like the top 20, maybe even top 15. So I haven't seen that all year, but we'll see in this game. It's going to be a real test because they like to get after the quarterback.
Well, we are going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we will talk more about this OSU offense. I literally hate it.
Oh, there you go. Superstar.
The end of the practice is when we do all of our, like, intensity drills.
Okay.
She was going at it.
Stop. If we get them to Detroit by, let's say, like Monday the 15th. Time's right there. There we go. Yeah. Just, you can't.
Don't want to talk about it.
When you see the water tower, you're gonna make a right.
If we win this, we have one way to get to the playoffs.
I know.
Welcome back to the pregame report. It's time to break down the Cowboy offense because we saw them have a great performance last week. They scored 55 points, overcame all the adversity from the injuries, so super proud of that. TCU runs a similar defense to us, so hopefully our offense will be able to kind of see through them, and Spencer will be able to read through them
they
better.
Scored 50
points, 55.
Could have easily scored 57, though.
Could have been.
I mean, we stopped.
That's exactly where I was averaging it out.
Okay. Well, but yeah, the offense performed to an OSU standard that we haven't seen since Mason Rudolph left. So that was something to see, and it all starts with the run game. It starts with that offensive line. We talked about him a lot today. And Desmond Jackson, really his coming out party. It is technically senior day for him, I think, is what they mentioned in the broadcast. I think he's a redshirt junior, so which means he's a senior. But no, I mean, I assume that he would come back next year. We don't know. Everyone gets an extra year of eligibility. We'll see. But for him to have, the day that he had was really, nice to see, a feel-good story. And I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but I think that's really all it is. I think it's just a feel-good story. I don't think that we're going to see him have a big game today. That doesn't mean that he can't have an efficient day. We need him to just be a guy that in the red zone can score touchdowns. If we get inside the 5-yard line, can he punch it in for us? But I definitely do not see him having over 200 yards or even close to the number that he had last week in this game. He's a talented guy, but there's a reason why he was third string. And I hate to bring a guy down like that after the biggest game of his life, but I'm just not going to get my hopes up for anything special like that today.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at why he's third string, I mean, obviously Chuba, coming off of a Heisman season, obviously he would start. LD, a senior, and he's been a backup
probably
his
the fastest
entire
guy
career.
on the team.
Yeah,
or
so
one of them.
obviously he would be a close, backup to Chuba. So Desmond kind of just got put into that position.
Yeah.
And he's really good. And so, I mean, OSU needs to start being known as RBU soon. We have really good running backs.
Well, hopefully our recruiting can reflect that. We had a really good recruit, DeAndre Glass. He sadly transferred. But no, back to Desmond Jackson. He's more of a power guy. I mean, you can see he's built like a power guy. He doesn't have a lot of speed on the outside. But what impressed me the most was his vision. I think that he was able to see those holes in the red zone and take advantage of those touchdown opportunities. He showed some burst once he gets into the open field. But I like what Ian was talking about, Dominic Richardson. He's a guy that was committed to TCU. When they brought in Zach Evans, as I mentioned earlier, the 5-star, number one guy, Richardson, as we all would be, was upset, and he, got out of his letter of intent, came to Oklahoma State. He did struggle last game, having a pretty bad fumble, which turned the momentum to Texas Tech's side. Desmond Jackson also had a very poor fumble at the end of that game. Mike Gundy talked about that. I mean, he said, yeah, he had a great game. I wish he wouldn't have fumbled it. So that's something to look for. That could be a reason why he's third string, is maybe he has fumbling issues. And this, I can promise you, this TCU defense is going to look for every opportunity to turn OSU over. And so another guy to watch out for, though, some guys that we saw get a little bit more involved last week was the grad transfers, D. Anderson and Tay Martin. That was nice to see. But again, Dylan Stoner is just MIA. Maybe he's injured. A lot of people speculate that he is injured. That's why he hasn't hasn't done much of anything in the last few games. Hopefully we can see him get more involved in what is probably going to be one of his last games too, being a senior. So, but no, getting those grad transfers involved, I mean, they're talented guys, so we'll see if Spencer Sanders can spread the ball around. But today is Talon Wallace's day. He's from Fort Worth. He was the number 1 rated high school player in that area of Fort Worth coming out of high school. He's dealt with so much in his career in terms of injuries, quarterback upheaval, etc. This is going to be his game to show out. I'm sure his entire family is there in Fort Worth to watch this game. Of course, his twin brother is a graduate assistant at Oklahoma State as a coach. So I think Talon Wallace is gonna have one of his biggest games in an Oklahoma State uniform today, or he's at least gonna try. So, but TCU's secondary is no slouch, so they're gonna try to hone in on him. They're gonna double team him with Morig, as I was talking about. But I mean, Talon Wallace is gonna be looking to get open, and Spencer Sanders is gonna be looking to throw it to him.
Yeah, but TCU's corners have also been really shaky because they've just dealt with so many injuries this season.
So COVID has really hurt TCU in terms of injuries. That could be they were dealing with that when they lost to West Virginia 24-6. But other than that, again, TCU has had some close games that they could have easily won. This could easily be a 6-2 team, just like OSU is, perhaps even 5-1. So don't sleep on this TCU team. If you remember back when Corn Dog was the quarterback, we went down to Fort Worth looking to get 6 wins, 7 wins, looking to get 7 wins. We ended up losing that game to a TCU team that I think only won 3 or 4 on the year. So we have a history of going to Fort Worth and losing games that we shouldn't in the past few years. I'm excited to see, though, how excited these guys are and how hyped they are to play this game, because in reality, I mean, the coaches are telling them, hey, we still have a good shot to make the Big 12 championship game if West Virginia is to beat Iowa State today, or if OU is to lose, one of their next 2 games to West Virginia or Baylor. Remember, OU is dealing with COVID issues really bad right now. We don't know who's all out for them today against Baylor. But if they're dealing with issues again next week and are not able to play, look out. So OSU should be motivated to play this game. The offensive line should be motivated from their performance last week, but they know that they're going to have to bring it against a much more talented TCU defensive line and much more talented TCU defense altogether.
And when I look at the whole Tylen having a good game and the corners being kind of iffy sort of situation, obviously the other part of that equation is Spencer throwing the ball to Tylen, who often he throws when Tylen is in tight coverage. And recently I've noticed, and I think I've just noticed it recently because it's what I've been paying attention to more recently, is that what makes Spencer's interceptions different than other quarterbacks' interceptions is that Spencer's throwing it practically right to these corners, these safeties, these just defensive players, versus when OSU defensive men get turnover or get interceptions, it's because they're leaping or reaching for the ball and they happen to jump up and come down with it, or they jump out to the side and grab it. But Spencer's throwing it right to these guys. So that makes me a little nervous.
Well,
today.
that could be because of a miscommunication. Usually when you see quarterbacks throw it right to the other team, it's because of a miscommunication between them and the receiver. And OSU's offense is predicated on timing throws. So if one little thing is off, then it can easily be an interception. I don't know if that's on the quarterback. I would assume that they would, blame it on the quarterback because of how experienced the receivers are for OSU. So again, that is on Spencer Sanders, but he did have. I'm not going to rag on him because he did have a good game.
Yes.
I'm not saying that you were. I'm just saying.
No, yeah.
He had a good game last week. He was efficient. He did have that one interception, but he didn't fumble the ball. We haven't seen him fumble the ball hardly at all in the last few games. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good game to see if he is healthy. His running game return. We haven't seen that a lot. We just kind of see him scramble for some first downs, etc. But I would like to see him get involved in the run game because, again, that's what separates him as a quarterback is his running ability, because it's definitely not his passing ability. I'm sorry. He's not the most natural thrower. He's not the most natural pocket passer at all, and his pocket awareness is marginal. So him being able to run and use his legs is what makes him unique and what makes our offense unique, and we're going to need that today because, hey, Desmond Jackson, there's a lot of tape on him now. TCU is going to see that, and they're going to try to neutralize him to the best that he can, and Again, he's not going to have a game like he did last week.
Absolutely. Spencer did run for a touchdown last week, which is nice to see. But again, we want to see that more. Maybe he'll run more today in like the red zone or something. But
more RPOs. I would like to see some more RPOs in the red zone.
For sure. I'm down to see that. All right. Well, we're going to take it over to Alex Ian one more time for who has the edge in offense.
Thank you, Lainey. Parker. A lot of TCU's offense is Max Duggan. I feel like he's more of a poor man's Sam Ehlinger. He's decent, but I feel like he's not one of the best quarterbacks of the Big 12.
Right, for sure. And that's why we say that the Cowboys do have the edge on offense today. Although statistically, they're pretty evenly matched. Both teams are averaging 28 points per game. TCU does have the edge in that they have 40 more rushing yards, which is 40 yards is not that much considering that we are almost done with the whole season. Looking at the quarterbacks, Duggan has 1,370 yards compared to Sanders' 1,085 yards, but considering that Sanders was out for a couple of games due to that high ankle sprain, overall the Cowboys have 200 more passing yards than the Horned Frogs, so that's also something to take into note that I think we have the edge there. Lainey, you brought up, that the battle of the running backs here, maybe OSU can be RBU someday. I think that's definitely going to be something that we need to watch out for today. Desmond Jackson is the starter today. I know that you have some things about Zach Evans from TCU, but I'll let you talk about that. Just one thing that I thought was funny is that Evans from TCU has 36 carries on the season, whereas Desmond Jackson had, I think, 36 as well in his one game last week. So that's just funny to note, the playing time there. Offensive line is doing great. Desmond Jackson gave all the props to the offensive line so that they were perfect from the get-go last week. So hopefully they can do that again. Although with that Tevin Jenkins not playing anymore, they're going to have to shuffle around. But Jake Springfield said that they didn't let that phase them last week. So hopefully we can see that again today.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach Evans, the 5-star running back from Houston, kind of was the reason Richardson thankfully came to Oklahoma State. He has 37 carries on the year, 251 yards, and a touchdown. But Max Duggan is still the leading rusher. He has 409 yards on the season, and Duggan has 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. A lot of the offense is going to be on Dugan's shoulders, as it has for a couple of years now. Another running back on here, Darwin Barlow, 5'11", 204 pounds, has 61 rushing attempts, 387 yards, and 4 touchdowns from Newton, Texas. So it looks like Evans might be running back 2 here, but I think they're just waiting on Evans to come to form because he's that 5-star.
And he's just a freshman too.
Absolutely. Receiver-wise, not a whole lot to write about. Tay Barber, 30 catches, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's 5'9", 185 pounds, so short guy, but speedy, like we see with Hollywood Brown now, Tyreek Hill, kind of in that same length. Quentin Johnson as well, 14 catches, 240 yards, a touchdown, and 17.1 yards per catch. And then the tight end, Pro Wells, who I think might get a couple of targets today, 6'4", 250-pound junior from St. Petersburg, Florida. 12 catches, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the season.
Still nothing compared to Tylan Wallace. We can't count him out. Gundy was saying earlier this week that he's just a joy to be around, and that he really has enjoyed working with Tylan and is so excited for him, to go on to bigger and better things. Hopefully in the NFL, seeing him in the 1st or 2nd round pick. I do think that OSU will have the edge with the run game. I'm excited to see how these 4 running backs between the 2 new ones on OSU and the 2 with TCU can do that. And also, as Lainey and Parker were saying, with the dual threat of both Duggan and Spencer Sanders, I think that overall these 2 offenses are going to be a very dynamic mix today, and I think it'll be a good game.
Yeah, I feel like they have similar skill sets on the offense and kind of the defense as well. So I feel like that'll make the game close, but not time for predictions yet. I believe it's time for buy or sell.
Yes.
So let's get to that real quick.
First up, Lainey and Parker, will Max Duggan throw for over 150 yards today?
I'll start. You know what? I think I'll buy that. Last week, again, against Kansas, he showed, he's always proven that he is a competent passer. And I would argue with you, Ian. I don't think that he's a poor man's Sam Ellinger. I think that he's a lot different as a player. I think that he's a much better runner, and he's looking to run a lot more. And I do think that he has a lot more arm talent, especially downfield, than Ellinger does. So I'm going to buy that, and I think that he can get into that 170, 180 range.
Lainey?
All right, so not going to lie, I literally just pulled up Max Duggan's game-by-game yards just so I could more clearly do this, because I know that he doesn't pass the ball a lot.
Right.
So with the numbers that I have in front of me, I don't know if this is cheating.
No,
but with the numbers that I have in front of me.
Sabermetrics.
Cool. There we go. I'm using my resources. I like that. I'm going to sell it because he's only thrown for over 100 or close to 150 yards once, and that was at West Virginia. They lost, and I think that our secondary is just going to be overpowering today.
I think so too, and I think, like you said, Lainey, it's going to be more of a running game rather than a passing game today.
Our next buy or sell, will the Cowboy defense recover a fumble today?
Ooh, I'll buy it. I think we did it a couple times last week, and so I hope that if TCU does it, then our guys are going to be looking to recover that, give us a turnover like we've been hoping they do.
I'm going to buy it as well. I think that there's going to be some turnovers today. for the TCU side. I mean, they have struggled with that this year. They also struggle with penalties. So I think that this game, OSU is going to recover a fumble.
That's something that we can hope to see. And, maybe Trey Sterling will have another great game on the defensive side of the ball. Next one, Desmond Jackson. Will he have 150 rushing yards by or sell Laney?
Laney, go ahead.
I mean, I went first last time. I'll go first again. I love going first. No, I don't. I'm going to buy it because last week he had 235. 150 is up there, but I think he'll do it. I'm just going to buy it.
Selling it 100%. I talked about it earlier in the show. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong that it was not just a flash in the pan against a really bad Texas Tech run defense.
We always hope we're wrong in situations
but
like
this TCU run defense is much more talented than Texas Tech is, and I think that because there's tape on Desmond, and I don't think the offensive line is going to perform as well as they did last week. I do not see him getting close to 150 yards.
All right. Our final buy or sell. Does Spencer Sanders throw an interception today? Or will he not throw an interception today?
Sell. I'm going to sell that. I think that he will throw an interception today. That doesn't mean that it's going to be awful. I do think that because of the way that TCU schemes their secondary, that's really one of TCU's main strengths. That's what Gary Patterson, his background is with linebackers and safeties, or linebackers and secondary. I do think that they're going to confuse him on a play, and he can throw it. He sails one, or he's not on the same page as the receiver, and they have some guys, if they are healthy and don't have COVID, that can easily get those interceptions. So I'm going to sell that he doesn't throw an interception.
Mm-hmm. I'm also going to sell it because saying that he doesn't throw an interception and selling it means that he could throw just one interception. And I think that throwing just one interception is actually pretty good for Spencer.
You're right.
Yeah. So I'm going to sell it for that reason. And also for reasons that Parker brought up. When Spencer throws the ball, if it's a long pass, it kind of hangs there. So that gives, corners and safeties a lot of time to stare at it. So I can see him throwing an interception.
OSU quarterbacks tend to struggle against TCU. We've seen it throughout the years that TCU's been in the Big 12. So, we've struggled before. I don't think that's going to change in the turnover department.
Well, definitely a lot of things to think about today, and it should be a pretty good game overall for the Cowboys. Just a good game to watch, I think. Moving on to predictions. My prediction is 27-24 OSU, and I think it's kind of funny. Laney and I were talking before the show that we actually picked the same prediction, but I was keeping the score low. We talked about that the teams both have pretty strong defenses, so that's why I think the score is going to be pretty low, and as Ian and I were talking, the offenses are pretty evenly matched, so that's why I think it's going to be a close game. Ian, what did you predict?
Well, I think TCU is very physical. Actually, they're 3-1 in their last 4 games, and since TCU joined the Big 12, in 2012, Oklahoma State leads that series 5-3. The spread on this game, I was checking beforehand, was 2.5.
Pretty close.
Yeah. I was talking with Parker off air that he thought Texas Tech would be the week that we struggled. I think this is the week where we could end up losing this game. I don't have that as my prediction, though. I think OSU will squeak by 30-28.
Laney, Parker, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think that I was necessarily wrong about us struggling last week against Texas Tech. Without a fluke onside kick touchdown and a pick six, we could easily have lost that game. So, but I agree with Ian. This TCU team is much more disciplined. They have a lot more talent, especially on the defensive side, than Texas Tech does. But I still have OSU winning and covering 31-27. I think that maybe we're wrong about Spencer Sanders and he doesn't turn the ball over and he's able to use his legs as he did in the past. Tylan Wallace is going to be the key today. Against that TCU secondary. If he can have a huge day, I think that we can win this game. Desmond Jackson, just get touchdowns in the red zone. That's all we really need you to do. We don't want you to be Chuba. We don't need you to be LD Brown. We just need you to be efficient. Being a third-string guy. And I do think that our defense is going to neutralize Max Duggan in that TCU offense and their run game. So I think we're going to get out of Fort Worth with a big win, and we're going to cover that spread.
Mm-hmm. And as Alex mentioned, I also predicted 27-24 OSU. I think a lot of our games, besides games against teams like Kansas, are just close games all in all, so you can't really ever give OSU a huge margin. And I just don't think it'll be super high scoring because, again, it's hard to predict games that kind of go into the 30-point range. So I'm going 27-24. That's my bet. Interesting.
This game's at 11. who knows what's going to happen in this game, as you said, but I do think that OSU has the talent to come away with this game with a win. And like I said, if West Virginia can beat Iowa State today, the chances that OSU makes that Big 12 championship can go up considerably.
Yes.
So we're looking for that. We also need Kansas State to beat Texas. But the easiest way would be for OU to lose one of their next 2 games, but we are not going to bank on that.
Yeah. Yeah, Big 12 championship is looking pretty crazy. I've automatically just kind of thrown in Iowa State as a shoo-in. I don't know if they're going to lose today, but I mean, if they want to, that's cool. But I just throw them in there. So really the battle is for who's going to play Iowa State in my head. And then that's where I take it as, Texas needs to lose, OU needs to lose, we need to win out sort of situation.
And Iowa State is playing really good football right now. I don't see them losing to West Virginia today, but if they did, that would be great for us. One thing to look out for OSU today is just coaching. I mean, we talked about how Mike Gundy, he really looks up to Gary Patterson as a coach. He's learned a lot from him. Maybe that causes him to, tighten up a bit against him. We'll see. This is another team that has nothing to lose. And, OSU definitely has something to lose in this game. So we'll see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. Well, today's battle is really going to be the second to last step for a chance at the Big 12 championship. So I hope our team keeps that in mind. I'm sure they have it in mind. I'm sure coaches have just been using this as their extra motivation for these last couple games.
One last thing. This is Lainey's last show on the pregame report. She is graduating. And also Santi, our computer guy, he's also graduating. So
the technical director, computer guy.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, he's also graduating. I'd like to thank the entire crew. Would like to thank you guys for the entire great season. It's been wonderful hosting with you, Lainey. We always do a fist bump before, so fist bump again. And just good luck as you go into the real world. But yeah, it's been a pleasure this year.
Dang, it's gonna be my first time crying on the air or something. No, all right. Well, the Cowboys are getting ready to take the field in Fort Worth right now, so make sure you tune into that game on ESPNU for the first time. ESPN2.
Next week is ESPNU. This week is ESPN2.
There we go. ESPN2 for the first time this season. For myself, Parker, Adam from Wyoming, Alex, and Ian, thank you guys so much for watching today. Everyone else will see you next week besides me.